All right, and welcome back. Listen, we've had such an amazing journey together so far. We've been talking about who are you truly at the core. We got into that life mission statement, figuring out what is our true purpose? What's our life mission really all about? Who are we at the core? We've also been talking about what does life look like on our terms? We've been talking about goals. We've been talking about achievement accelerators, how to begin creating an extraordinary quality of life. We've also been talking about some of the barriers that hold us back from getting there. And today, what we're going to be talking about is destiny mapping. This is all the invisible forces that will shape your future success, your future failures, and your future level of happiness. We are going to uncover why you say you want to do this one thing, but you do something else instead, or why you say you don't want to do something, but you keep on doing it. We're going to understand why we experience pain in life, and once again, where our destiny unfolds. So let's dive into the mission overview. So, like I said, we're going to be learning what shapes our decision making. We're going to understand what we define as pain and pleasure because it's different for every single person. We're also going to understand how our values and our rules determine our future success and happiness. We're going to uncover the true reasons you have goals in the first place. We're going to begin identifying all the sources of pain in our life. We're going to uncover identity conflicts that prevent us from achieving the things that we want most. And we're also going to be learning how to immediately feel the way that you want without actually having to achieve your goal. So a lot of really great stuff. So our goal today, the mission that you and I have together in this module, is that we're going to learn how to experience the emotional needs that you are really wanting right now instead of having to wait to achieve a goal. That way, in the process of actually achieving it, we're already emotionally fulfilled in the way that we really want to be. We're also going to learn how to unblock all of the mental barriers that are keeping us from the actions that are necessary to do. That way we can begin achieving our goals faster and actually do the actions needed to achieve our goals in the first place. Now, I've said this time and time again, you're probably sick of me saying this, but everything that we do in life is based on pain and pleasure. So we're constantly going after pleasure and avoiding pain at all costs. But here's the real question. What determines what we link pain and pleasure to? Because it really is different for every single person. This is not some universal rule. For some people, working out is ultimate pleasure. Going to that gym, going for a run, lifting weights, that is ultimate pleasure. But for someone else, it's absolute pain. It's like, I want to avoid that at all costs. Like, I hate doing something like that. For someone else, it's getting that 9-to-5 job. The idea of that stable, secure paycheck every 2 weeks. That sounds so amazing. But then for somebody else, that sounds terrible. It sounds like a death sentence, like we're getting trapped in some life box. For someone else, creating a business is ultimate pleasure. For someone else, it's scary, it's unknown. Eating healthy, saving money, material possessions. We all link pain and pleasure to different things. So we're going to start uncovering why one person finds one thing pleasurable, why someone else finds it to be painful. And then we're also going to uncover what this means about our destiny and how to begin shaping our destiny the way that we want it to go, and also our level and feeling of happiness. So this really all comes down to two things: our life rules and our life values. So life values are simply emotional states that we want to feel. And life rules are what must happen so that we give ourselves permission to actually feel the values or the emotions that we really want to feel. To understand this, we have to understand why we have goals in the first place. Listen, I've worked with so many people, and we all have different types of goals. Some of us want to get fit. Some of us want to increase our income. Some of us want more relationships. And if you're listening to this right now, my guess is that not only do you have one goal, but you probably have lots of goals in your life. And so here's the thing. Even though you have goals, those goals are not really what you want. You see, everything that we do in life, everything that we want, every goal that we have is simply because we are wanting to change the way that we feel emotionally. So when someone comes to me and they say they want to get fit, put on muscle, lose weight, it's not that they actually want their body to have more lines in it. They want to get fit because it may make them feel more confident or it means something. They want to change the way they feel emotionally. Same thing with income. When someone says they want a six-figure income, it's not that they actually want 100,000 pieces of paper that have a number one on it. They want to change the way they feel emotionally about their financial state or financial future. Same thing with getting married. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients that come to me and say, I just want to be married. I just want to get married. I'm running out of time. What do I need to do? And I tell them, it's like, you don't want to get married. And they're like, yeah, I do. I really want to be married. I'm like, okay, I tell you what. I've got I got a person that I know. He'll definitely marry you. The only problem is he is a bit of an alcoholic and he's very abusive. But he'll marry you. Do you want to do it? Well, no, I don't want that. I'm like, of course you don't. And I tell them, it's not that you want to be married. You want what you think it's going to feel like once you are married, or that job title. So that's the very important thing here. We don't actually want these specific things. We just want the feeling that we think we're going to have once we actually achieve those goals. And that's, once again, the only reason we set goals is because we want an emotional state change. And that's it. And this is also known as our end values. So there's really two types of value systems here. There's end values, which is the emotional state that you desire most. It's what you really want to feel at the very end of it. Then there's our means values. This is how we actually go about pursuing our emotional states. So let's talk about it this way. Your goals are your means values. The goals that you have in your life, everything that you're trying to achieve are a means, and it's a means to an end. What you actually want to feel emotionally is the end value. So your goals, everything you want to achieve in life, is really just ways of reaching your ends values or your pleasure states. You see, our life is shaped by what we want most and what we fear most. So let's talk about the two type of life values, because this is very, very important to understand why we go after some things and why we tend to avoid others. So there are two types of life values: moving toward values and moving away from values. Now, your moving toward values are emotional states that you want to feel. These are your pleasure states. So once again, because they're pleasure states, these are the things that we go after. Our moving away from values are emotional states that we want to avoid. These are our painful states or our painful emotions or feelings. So let's talk a little more specifically about our moving toward values. So if I were to ask you, what do you want most? Or what do you value most? Or if I were to say life is about blank, what would you say? What is life about to you? What do you want most? Now, for some people, they might say, life is about, getting everything that you can. It's about accumulating. It's about building wealth and assets and cars and houses and all that stuff. For someone else, they might say, well, that's great, but, if you don't have love, then you have nothing else. Life is about love. It's about, giving love and sharing love and having intimate relationships and having that experience. And someone else might say, well, yeah, that's great, but if you don't have the health to have those relationships, if you don't feel vibrant, if you don't have energy, if you don't have actual health to live a long and healthy life, what's the point? You see, we all have different rules or ideas about what life is really about. And there really is no right or wrong answer to this, but we do need to understand what we feel life is most about. So what is life about to you? What would you say? Now, talking about our moving toward values, there are so many out there, but I'm going to give you some different ideas. One could be security, comfort, freedom, adventure, passion, excitement, joy. Could be connection, love, intimacy, significance, growth, knowledge, health, success, or power, and more. You see, these are all things that life could be about, or what we really, really want on the deepest level. So the question is, which ones do you think you are really seeking in life? What are those moving toward values? What is it you really want at the very core of it? Now, we all want these things, and we all want all of them, but we all want them in different orders. And so that's the thing. If I were to ask you, what would you rather have? Would you rather have love in life, or would you rather be free, have freedom? What would you say? Or would you rather have adventure or security? Or would you rather have success or comfort, health or success? I mean, any combination. What would you say? Our hierarchy of values are very, very important, because this is exactly what shapes our decisions in life. Let's talk about a few examples. So like I said, values shape decisions. So let's say we have John and we have Shannon. Now at the very end of it, the thing that John wants most, his top 3 values, are security, comfort, and knowledge. But then you have Shannon over here, who's all about adventure, passion, health, freedom. Well, because they have different end values, they have different moving toward pleasure states, the goals that come out of them, that manifest in the actual world, look a lot different. Because John values security, comfort, and knowledge, he may be more inclined to want to go after that 9-to-5 job, have a nice house, and spend his spare time reading and learning and growing in knowledge. But then Shannon, on the other hand, might say, no, I want to start my own business because that's going to give me a sense of adventure, of potential freedom. Because if I owned my own business, then I could be free. She might be pursuing working out and getting fit and pursuing her music and her art. You see, our values shape our decisions. Let's put it this way. You know, if you value comfort and you value security, and I were to ask you, hey, let's go skydiving this weekend, what do you think you would say? You'd be like, heck no, I'm staying at home. I'm not going skydiving. It sounds dangerous. I might die. But if someone else values adventure, they value, freedom, they might be all about it. So it's important to understand what our true values, our moving toward values are, because our moving toward values will start to determine and help us understand why we are going after certain things in life and not others. Okay, so everything that you do, every goal that you have is really because of some moving toward values. So one way you can look at it is this. Think about all the goals that you have. Maybe it's getting fit, maybe it's finances, maybe it's a relationship. And you want to ask yourself, what am I really trying to get by obtaining this thing? Am I trying to get that security or that comfort? Go back to that previous slide, but think about all those different those different value systems. Because at the end of the day, every one of your goals is simply to get to one of those moving toward values. Now, here's the thing. As much as we're going after these moving toward values and it's shaping our decisions, at the very same time, we have what's called moving away from values. Now, moving away from values are all the emotional states that we want to avoid at all costs. These are our painful states. These are the things that we do not want to experience. And our moving away from values are what keep us from taking the action that we need to do to get towards our goals. I should be doing this, but I'm not. If anything in your life, if there's something that you should be doing, but you're not doing it, more than likely, it's because there's some moving away from value. There's some painful state that is blocking, that is in the way of actually doing that particular thing. Now, we all have lots of moving away from values, but here are some. Could be anger, could be frustration, could be rejection, humiliation, failure, fear, sadness, depression, could be loneliness, could be guilt. Now, this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but these are some of them. Now, listen. None of us want to experience any of these things, except for maybe a few kind of people. But most people do not want to be in a state of anger. They don't want to feel humiliated. They don't want to feel rejected. They don't want to feel frustrated. But looking at this list, what are the ones that really stick out to you that you're like, oh man, yeah, I definitely hate that? Just like we have a hierarchy of values for our moving towards that helps us understand why we may go after building a business as opposed to going after and just getting a 9-to-5 job because maybe we value freedom over security. Well, the same thing for our moving away from values. We all have a hierarchy of states. So if I were to ask you, what do you want to avoid more than anything? Would you rather experience failure or would you rather experience rejection? Would you rather experience humiliation or would you rather experience sadness? Would you rather experience guilt or loneliness, anger or sadness? Of course, any combination of these things. But this is important to understand because if we're trying to do something that could potentially lead to one of these painful states, we are more than likely not going to do it. And that is because we always avoid pain more than we go after pleasure. So what that means is if you're over here saying that you want to start a business, but yet you're not taking the actions necessary, It's probably because you have more pain associated to the things you have to do to get to that building that business than you have in your current situation right now. Now, we've been talking about the life values, but to understand when we actually experience these painful states, we have to understand our life rules. So, like I said, our life values are the emotional states that you want to actually feel. It's the things that you're going after, the things that you're avoiding. But the thing that determines when you actually experience that is our life rules. So it's what must happen to experience that particular emotional state, whether it's good or bad. So let's talk about rules for a second. So let's say I have a client and they come to me and I'm like, what is life about? Why are you trying to achieve these things? And I'm like, I just want to be successful, because maybe they value success more than anything. That's their number one priority. And I tell them, okay, well, do you feel successful right now? Well, no, I don't. And I said, interesting. So what needs to happen for you to finally feel successful? And they might say something like, well, I'll feel successful once I'm making $100,000 a year income, or once I own my own home, or I start my own business. This is really important to understand. Our rules determine when we experience that thing. It determines when we give ourselves permission to experience it. So if there's something that you feel that you're wanting that you're not getting, we have to start understanding that it's our rules that might be getting in the way. So someone else might value love. And if you ask them, well, what needs to happen for you to experience love? They might say, well, I should be married by now, or I need to be in a relationship, or I should have X number of friends or followers. I should be having kids. Someone else may value certainty, and their idea of certainty is to have a $100,000 a year job, or to be married, or have X dollars in the bank. Someone else, in terms of their moving away from values, their rule for the moving away from value might be like, well, I hate failure. And if I ask them, well, what has to happen for you to experience failure? And they say, well, if I try something and it doesn't work out the way I want or expect it to, well, then that means I failed. Or maybe someone else, their moving away from value is rejection. They hate rejection more than anything else. And I ask them, well, what's your rule for that? And they say, well, if I go up to someone and I try to talk to them, or I pitch a client or whatever, and they say no, and I don't get the desired outcome, that knows I've been rejected. Someone else, it might be loneliness. If I'm not married in a relationship, I don't have X number of friends. We all have rules that govern when we finally experience the emotional states we really want to feel. Anytime that we experience pain in life, I'm talking anger, frustration, sadness, whatever. When we experience pain, it's because our life rules are not being met by reality, or our life blueprint is not being met by our current reality. But here's what's really awesome about this. If we begin to change our rules, we can begin to change the states and actually feel the way that we want to. So we really can experience any value that we want, and we can avoid pain by simply changing the rules to winnable ones. So you're probably thinking like, well, what the heck does that actually mean? Like, what are you talking about? So let's go into it. So let's talk about a few of these examples that we went over. So let's say I have a client and they say that their top value, their top moving toward value is success. And I ask them, do you feel successful? No, I don't. Well, why is that? Well, because I need to be making $100,000 a year, own my own house, or have a family. Well, once again, if they do not have those things in their life, they're not going to feel successful. So then if they begin to change the rule and they say, what if true success is simply the fact that I find ways to live my principles or live my truth? Or it could even be like true success is the fact that, each day I pursue personal growth or find one thing that I can achieve at or grow from each and every day. Someone else with love, their old rule might be true love equals married relationship, that I get praise from my partner or lots of friends. Their new rule might be that, true love is something that I give, not something that I receive. Or that, I know I have love in my life when there are people around me in my life that I can share love with. Significance. Maybe the old rules that I have to have X amount of income, or a house, or a job title, or a net worth, or a family to feel significant. Their new rule could be that, true significance is my ability to further pursue my goals, my passion, or my truth. Now let's look at the moving away from values. Maybe someone's moving away from value is rejection. They're like, hey, I hate rejection more than anything else. And then I know that I experience rejection when I don't receive the desired outcome or I'm being told no. Well, maybe they could change the new rule to, real rejection is when I don't live my truth. That others can't reject me. It's only when I reject myself that I'm actually experiencing real rejection. Failure. Maybe their old rule is when I don't achieve my desired outcome, that's when I experience failure. The new rule might be, true failure is when I don't try at all. Or maybe true failure is when I don't actually learn from an experience. That's when I experience failure. Humiliation. Maybe humiliation is being told no, being laughed at, not achieving desired outcome. The new rule could be, humiliation is really when I don't pursue my goals or my dreams, or when I'm too afraid to even try. You see, our rules determine when we experience something. And the reason why this is so profound is because, once again, if someone's moving toward value success and that's what they really want, and their definition or their rule of success is that if they try something or they don't get a desired outcome that they really want, that they're not successful, well, they are going to be emotionally drained. They're going to feel unfulfilled. They're not going to feel successful until the day they finally get that desired outcome. Of course, the real kicker is, even if they actually got the desired outcome, most goals expand, so they're going to be constantly chasing this. When we change our rules, our moving toward rules, to things that we can win at every single day, and this is why this is so important, we can actually begin experiencing the feeling of success. We can begin experiencing the emotion of significance. The things that we really, really want at the true core, we can actually live those out every single day if we change the rules that determine when we experience those things. The same thing from moving away from values. If you hate rejection, if you hate feeling like you're a failure or humiliation, if we change the rules, we can change when we experience these things. We're going to talk about in a second here why this is so important when it comes to going after the things that you want in life and getting the life that you really, really want. So let's talk about identity conflicts, because this is where it starts to come into play. So what is an identity conflict? An identity conflict is simply when we want to take action, but we can't get ourselves to do it. It's like when we say we want to do this one thing, but we're not really taking action. Once again, identity conflicts happen when we associate pain and pleasure to doing something. So this is when we get stuck. So if you ever felt like you've been stuck, or like you don't know what to do, or you're trying to take action, but you really can't get yourself to do it, more than likely you are experiencing what's called an identity conflict. So let's talk about this. So let's say John wants to start a business. And so he's coming to me, or just in general, he's wanting to start a business. And once again, his moving toward value, the reason he really wants to start this business anyways, is because at the very, very core of it, he's trying to experience freedom and he's trying to experience success. And I ask him, I say, okay, well, what needs to happen for you to feel that? And he says, well, I really need to be making $100K a year and own my own house, live life on my terms. I'm like, okay, well, what's the problem? What are you struggling with? He's like, well, it's like I'm having a hard time really getting this marketing section of my business up. I'm really having a hard time doing the things that I need to do with my business. I'm like, well, why do you think that is? What do you fear most? What are the painful states that you hate experiencing? And he says, above anything else, I really hate feeling failure. That's the thing I avoid like anything else. Well, guess what? John's going to have a really hard time starting a business, because what does a business entail when you start something from scratch, start something new? You're probably going to experience failure. I mean, that's part of being an entrepreneur. You got to try things, and those things may not work out. And the more things you try, eventually you'll find things that actually work, but you will experience failure. But if his rule of failure is, if I try something and it doesn't work out, well, now he has an issue, because the minute he gets ready to work on his marketing campaign or this certain section of his business that might lead to freedom, he's immediately being introduced with a potential fear of failure. Oh my gosh, what if I put this money towards this marketing, advertisement or campaign and it doesn't work? I'm going to spend all this money. So John fails to take action with his business because there's a possibility that he may fail. Remember, we always avoid pain more than we go after pleasure. So how do you begin to change this? How do you get it to where finally you take the action and you truly commit? You have to change your rules for what has to happen to experience these things. So let's talk about John again for a second. So now he's trying to build a business. I say, well, what do you really want? And he's like, well, I want to experience success. I want to experience freedom. And we decide, okay, well, what's a new definition for freedom and success? How can we win at it every single day? Because your business may not make $100,000 a year for a number of years, or maybe even ever. And we don't want to get to the point where we don't feel successful or free if we don't match those rules. So we change the rules to, well, what if freedom simply is my ability to choose? That I know that I am free when I have the ability to choose what I do each and every day. And I know I'm truly successful when I'm living out my truth, when I'm pursuing the things that I want or that I desire. So this is good. So then we say, okay, well, what about you moving away from values? Because there's a lot of things you need to be doing with this business that you're not doing. It's because you're afraid of failure. So if we change the rule to, true failure is this if I don't try, or that as long as I learn from this experience, I cannot fail. So if I try it and it doesn't work out the way I want to, that's not failure. The real failure is if I fail to learn from that experience so I can crush it the next time. This becomes a very interesting shift, and this is how you start to really begin taking the actions that you need to. Because think about it. If his original definition of failure is, what if I try this particular thing and it doesn't work out? That's how I know I have failure. Well, if there's ever anything that might have the possibility of failing, he's going to avoid it. But if his new rule of failure is, hey, as long as I actually learn from everything that I do, then I cannot fail, it's going to be a lot easier for John to take the actions needed to build the business. It's the same thing, whether it's health and fitness and trying to lose weight, or trying to get that relationship, or trying to double your income, or go after certain job title. It does not matter what the goal is. You have to understand you're moving toward values. You have to understand the rules that determine when you experience those so that you can win every single day. But at the same time, we have to understand what we fear most and what has to happen, or the rule, when we actually experience those things. And we have to make sure that our rules, that they are set up in a way so that we take the action that we need to, and that we can live the emotional life that we want to live starting right now. The worst thing is to be miserable on your journey to achievement. We want to get to a point where we are already experiencing all the emotions that we really want at the very end of the day right now, so that we're living the ultimate fulfilled emotional life on the journey to actually achieving what we want. So by changing rules, John receives his pleasure values now and can take action, because the only way to experience pain is to not try, or if he fails to learn. Like I've said, we always avoid pain more than we go for pleasure. So we have to make sure that our moving away from values are not in conflict or in the way of us taking the actions needed to achieve our moving toward values or our goals. So the real question becomes, do you align with your goals? You see, every goal requires actions to be taken. You can't just sit there and hope for it to happen. You don't just sit there thinking about doing push-ups and expect to get fit. That's not how it works. You got to take action. We will only commit to actions if they meet our values and they meet our rules. So what does that mean? That means if you truly value comfort and security, and you're over here trying to build a business and you're quitting your job, you're going to have some issues because your life values and your goals are not aligned. So, once again, we even talked about this before. If we value comfort and security, we're going to have a hard time going skydiving or starting that business. If we value freedom and adventure, we may have a hard time looking for a job that makes us feel trapped. If we value success over health, then we may find it difficult finding the time to work out when we could use that time to be working on our business. So our hierarchy of values also determine the actions that we take. When we have two options, should I take this job that pays more, but I have to move to, middle of nowhere USA, versus I could stay here, make less money, but I'm going to be around family. Well, how are you going to make that decision? Should you go somewhere that you don't know and the unknown to make more money, or should you stay by family? There's no right or wrong answer, but it's going to come down to your values, and that's going to determine the actions that you take. So if you have a hard time making decisions, or you're stuck on a decision in life, it's probably because you don't have a clear set of priority of values or a hierarchy of values to help you make that decision. All decisions in life come from our values. So you want to be sure that your hierarchy of values match what they should be to achieve what you want. You want to make sure that your rules are winnable so that you can feel what you want now and don't have pain associated taking action. If your values aren't in the right order, change them. If your rules don't serve your emotional states, change them. We actually have the ability to consciously change our values and rules at any point in time. And that is what's so great about being a human, is that we get to consciously create the values. A lot of us feel like, oh, this is just how I was born, and this is who I am. Well, guess what? We get to wake up every day and make the conscious decision of what you want to value. We can train ourselves to value what we want. The only reason you have your particular values you have now is because of so many things growing up. Maybe your parents instilled certain values in you, society, marketing, but we have trained ourselves to value certain things. So if we find that our values are not serving us in the goals that we really want, then we can change those. So how do we put this all together? Because we've gone through quite a bit. So I'm going to kind of talk about basically your assignment for this particular module. And here's what I want you to do, at the very end of this. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to write down all the goals that you have, which shouldn't be a problem because we've already done that in previous modules. So I want you to, take an assessment and rewrite out all the goals that you have. Now, these are your means values, right? They're the means to an end. So write down your goals. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to list your moving toward and moving away from values. So be sure to go back to that list of moving toward, moving away from values and ask yourself, what is it that I really want at the very end of it? What am I trying to move towards? It's not the $100,000 a year that you really want. Maybe it's significance. Maybe it's security. Maybe it's comfort. Maybe it's freedom. Maybe it's the feeling of success. So ask yourself, what are the emotional states that I really want to feel the most? And what are the emotional states that I'm trying to avoid at all costs? The next thing you're going to do is assess if you're moving toward values are appropriate to achieving your goals. So if you are over here trying to lose 20 pounds, but you are over here also valuing comfort as number one, you might have some challenges because you might have to get uncomfortable a few times in the pursuit of losing weight. So make sure and assess if you're moving toward values are appropriate to achieving your goals. The next thing you're going to do, you're going to write your current rules for moving towards and moving away from values. So as you list the hierarchy of all your moving toward values and all of your moving away from values, I want you to write down what has to happen for me to feel this way. So what has to happen for me to feel successful? Or what has to happen for me to feel significant? Or what has to happen for me to feel humiliated or rejected? So write down your current rules today for what has to happen. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create new rules for our moving toward and are moving away from values so that we can have the emotional states that we really, really want. So first, start with your moving toward values. Write new rules that will allow you to win every single day so that you can feel successful today instead of once you achieve the actual goal that you're going for. You're going to do the same thing for moving away from values. Write down a new rule that will give you the confidence and give you the ability to take the actions needed to achieve your goals so that you're not stuck in an identity conflict. The last thing you're going to do is you're going to change the hierarchy of your values based on how you want to start living today and what you want to prioritize. So looking at those moving toward values, let's say right now, your number one value is success. And then let's say the next one is significance. And then it's freedom. And you're over here saying like, man, I just feel lost. I feel empty. If I were to ask you, like, well, when's the last time that you felt the most alive? You're like, man, it was back when I was in college. So I'm like, well, okay, well, what were your values then? It's like, well, I mean, I was all about adventure and going out and seeing the world. Well, okay, maybe we need to change our value system. Maybe adventure should be closer to the top, because maybe right now you find that adventure is like number 10 on your list. Listen, we get to change our values whenever we want. But sometimes what happens as we get older, as our environments change, as jobs change, sometimes our values also change. And while there's no right or wrong priority of values, if you're not living the emotional life that you want to live, if you're not going after things that you really want, it's probably because your value system, your hierarchy of values, are not in the right order. So make sure you change your hierarchy of values so that they are aligned with the things that you want most. So if you value comfort number one, you're trying to lose weight and you're having a hard time taking action, well, maybe adventure needs to be number one, or maybe health and fitness needs to be number one. So make sure you change those values. Listen, if we want to change the course of our life, we must start by changing our values to match desired result, and we must make sure that our rules are created in a way to make sure that we win every single day. Our destiny, our life is shaped by what we want most and what we fear most. It's shaped by those moving toward values, and it's shaped by those moving away from values. But we will always avoid pain more than we go for pleasure. So if you find that you're not taking the action needed, it's because you have more pain associated to what has to happen than your current situation. So we've got to begin changing those rules. So that was an absolute lot that we just went over. So you may have to listen to this a few times, but take your time on this. This is such a massive thing. And I've seen some radical shifts in some people as they begin to change their values and begin to change their rules. What we value most is what we go after. So if you keep finding yourself staying late at work and you're working overtime and you're not taking care of your health, well, that may be because health is on the very far level value system. We have to consciously create the hierarchy that we want. You get to decide and you get to design the life that you want. So design it the way that you want to live. So when you imagine yourself living life on your terms, when you're living the way that you want to live, how does that person value things? What do they value first? What do they value second? What's third? And what are the rules that they've created for those moving away from values? Make sure you map that out, because this really does shape our destiny. It shapes our success, it shapes our failures, and it determines when we experience happiness or when we experience pain.